Hello everyone. Today I'm going to build a very short project using React application, and I'm going to show you all the processes step by step, starting from creating a brand new repository for our project and how to configure that later. All right. So first of all, let me head over to my GitHub. And for example, I want to create a new repository for hosting my this project. But before proceeding further, let me clarify which type of project I'm going to build today. I'm going to build a very simple project, and that is, you can say, a counter project. And I will not add any CSS or something like that, but I will try to show you how React Hook can make our project dynamic, and we can create this type of short functions within our project. And this video would be helpful if you are a complete beginner in React, or let's say you haven't done anything in React till now, but you have a decent amount of knowledge in JavaScript. But if you are an advanced user in React, or if you have knowledge in other framework of JavaScript, let's say Vue and several, then this video is not for you actually, because this video would look like are created for newbie like me. All right, so as I'm going to create a new repository, I have to click here and click on new repository, and in this page I have to give it a name. I'm gonna name it something like counter react app, or let's say I'm gonna name it something like react counter. All right, and I can give it a very short description, something like counter web app using React.js. And I'm going to keep this repository public for now. And I don't want to create any README file or gitignore or license or anything else. So I can simply click create repository. And this has provided me with some relevant commands to set up the new repository locally. And if you follow this, you need to create a folder by yourself, because I haven't added any file in this repository yet. But for the simplicity and synchronization thing, I would like to create a new folder with the same name. So I can simply copy this repository name, or you can simply copy it from here as well. And now I need to create a folder here. I know that my desktop looks kind of messy. Don't worry about it. I should have hide these things, but for now I'm not going to worry about that right now, because I am in a rush to create this video as soon as possible. All right, so I can simply create a folder, and I am going to apply the same name my repository currently has, and I can simply open this repository in my file explorer, and here I can open it in terminal. And now I have to apply this command line by line. But instead of copying each command and applying it serially, I can simply copy all of them using this button, and I can simply come here to my terminal, of course, and use Ctrl V, paste anyway. All right, enter, and there you go. Now I can simply reload to this browser, and you see it's working. And now let us do our thing. In this local machine, I currently have a single file, that is readme.md, that has been generated by this GitHub repository. But for now, I can simply delete this readme file because I don't need it right now. Whenever I'm going to create a new React app in this local folder, or you can say local directory, it would create a readme file by default for me. So I don't want any conflict among them. So I can simply delete that. And for the simplicity, I can, not simplicity, if I want to know what I did here, I can commit these changes by using git add dot for now and git commit name. Let me maximize it so that you can see it clear. Message would be delete init readme. That's it. Git push origin main. So that's it. All right, I can clear this repository. Sorry, terminal. I can simply close this terminal anyway. All right, now I am opening my terminal, and make sure that you are in the directory where you want to create the React application. Now, as of 2023, when I am recording this video, and it is 28 September 2023, Thursday, React Dev suggests using creating new React application using Vite. Don't get me wrong, although the spelling is Vite, the pronunciation would be Vite, not Vite. All right. So if I want to create a new application using Vite, the command would be something like this: npm create Vite. I want the latest version, so add latest. And I don't want to create any new directory. Instead of that, I want to host my this React application inside this current directory. So I am going to use a period like this and enter. And it asks me about the framework. I'm gonna select, as I want to use React, so I can simply use drop down button from my keyboard and select React and hit on the enter key. And I want to use pure JavaScript with SWC compiler, so enter. All right, it has generated me the relevant files. Now I need to install all of the dependencies. For installing the dependencies, you can use npm install, or you can simply use npm I, short form of install. But for now, let's say I'm gonna go with npm install. Enter. Give it some time to install all of the dependencies, and if this the first time you are installing or using npm on your system, then it might take longer. All right, it's very common, don't worry about that. Done. It has installed all of the necessary packages. You see that it has added 213 packages and audited 214 packages. That is not our concern. The main thing is it found 0 vulnerabilities. That is fine for us. 0 vulnerabilities. All right, now I need to run this application to my local server. So what I can use, I can simply use this npm run dev. Npm run dev, enter. And you see it has opened the application in port number 5173. I can simply use Ctrl and click here, and it would open this instantly. You see our first React application has been initialized. So if you want to head over to Vite documentation, you can simply click here. It would instantly take you to Vite's documentation, you see. And if you want to get the React documentation, you can simply over here and click on React, and it will take you to react.dev, the official React documentation. And it has a counter. You see that it has already a counter built in here, but we are not gonna use this. We are going to build our own simplistic counter from the scratch. So let's see how we can do that. But before doing that, let me head over to our local directory and open it in my favorite Visual Studio Code. I hope you can see it clear. Now let me introduce you with the folder structure. Here we have node modules. It contains a ton of things, which is essential, by the way, for using in your React application. So I don't need to worry about that. Don't delete or edit anything from the node modules ever. And this is our public directory. It contains the Vite SVG image, so I don't need to worry about that right now. Let me show you where this Vite SVG is working. You see that my application, let me close the other tabs for now. This application has this fav icon, and this is coming from this vite.svg. All right, here you see that we have a config.js file of Vite. We don't necessarily need to worry about that right now. And we have a package.json file. This JSON file is very important for any kind of project because it contains the project name, version, the script, the dependencies which we are going to use here, and some other dependencies as well. All right, so I don't need to talk about this right now because this is not our concern, at least for this videos project that we are going to build today. But in the future videos, we need to tweak some things in the package.json, and then I would talk about that. package log JSON. I don't want to talk about that right now because it would simply complicate the things. And here we have the index.html file, which can be considered as the backbone of any kind of web applications or website. Here you see that it contains the doc type HTML. Let me keep it side by side like this so you can simply understand how it actually works. And meta charts at UTF-8, fine. And you see that the vid.svg image is getting added here as the icon, website icon, like here, and some meta name and title, vid plus react, and the title is showing here. All right, so let's say I want to change the title, so I can simply change here like counter. If I simply save it, you see that the name changes instantly. And you'd see whenever you are changing your file and you are simply saving that document, or you can say the file, it would regenerate the changes, reapply the changes automatically in your website. All right. And this is the body. This is the root. However, or whichever thing we are going to use, it would get displayed from this root, and it has this main.jsx as the script. So let me simply close the index.html, and it has a git ignore. You can see here it automatically ignores this massive amount of node modules folder. Here you see, and some other things that we don't want to store in our GitHub repository. All right, now let's talk about this source folder. Inside this source folder, we have assets, and in that assets, I have, or you can say we have a react.svg, the svg image. Control click. If I simply control click, and we are getting the svg, I don't necessarily need to worry about that right now, so I can simply close it. And you see here we have app.css, and this is the css that is getting displayed right here, and app.jsx, we are going to make our changes right here. This is the index.css, and this is the main.jsx. All right, so as I was telling you that we are going to build our own simplistic counter application from the scratch, so I need to delete every previous thing. All right, so for that, firstly I would delete this index.css, so I can simply delete this. All right, as I have deleted this index.css, so I have to ensure to remove that thing from other files which are using that. All right, so for example, if I head over to main.jsx, you see that it is importing index.css. That means this main.jsx file is using something, or you can say some data from the index.css folder, but I don't have this index.css file anymore. So if I simply save it, you see that it's giving me an error, and it's telling me failed to resolve import index.css. Why is that? Because this file doesn't exist anymore, so I can simply delete this. All right, and you see that the previous black thing has been disappeared because that index.css contained those things. All right, and let me come over to app.jsx, and these things, these elements are in this app.jsx, in this div, so I can simply delete all of them. Whenever I am simply saving this, you see that it's telling me that it's getting nothing from here. That's because this return must need to return at least a div. So I can simply create a div right here and save. This is working. We are getting a blank page. You might say that why we are getting a blank page? Because we haven't done anything yet. I don't need to use previous count, so I can simply delete that. And I don't need the React logo and the use state, so I can simply delete those as well. All right, for example, no, I don't need this vid.svg icon here, so I can simply delete that as well. This div, I want to add a class name here named app. If you have used CSS, then you know that in HTML we use class, but in React we use class name. Let's say I'm gonna name it app. All right, nothing appears here because I haven't added anything here till now. Let me see whether I need to make any more changes before proceeding with our simplistic project. No, I don't think so. I think we are good to go. So I can simply close everything, and now I need to work on simply in app.jsx. So I have opened it here, and let's say I'm gonna display something so that I can show you that it actually works. We haven't broken down anything yet. So let's say I want to return an h1 element, then I want to return something like I am using React. Control S, you see, instantly I am using React displayed in our website, obviously in local server, but that's not the purpose of showing this to you. The main purpose of showing this to you to show you whether our React application is actually working or not. You see, it is working, so we are good to go. Now is the time to make our project counter project, so I can simply work on that. So for now, let me simply give it a name, something like, let's say, counter project, like this. Now I want the buttons, so I can simply use this button, and first button would be increase count. I want exactly 3 buttons here, one button for increasing the count, another button for decreasing the count, and one specific button to set the counter to 0. So as I want 3 more buttons, not 3 more, 2 more buttons actually, because I have already added a button, I can simply copy and paste. But as I want the exact line, and I would definitely made some changes later based on my needs, I can simply duplicate these lines. So if I want to duplicate any line, I have to keep my cursor in that line, and I can simply use the keyboard shortcut for it, and that would be Alt Shift and the down arrow key. So this and this, and this would be decrease count, and this would be set to 0, like this. So our button is ready. All right, now I need to display something. So for that reason, I need to use React hook. So I can simply use const, and then I can simply use a count, and then set count equal to use state React use tab. It has imported the use state from React for me, and then I have to provide the initial value of the counter. I want the initial value to be 0, so 0 it is. All right, and after all of these buttons, I want to have displayed the counter, so I can simply use count. You see, this count is getting displayed here. So this is our initial project. All right, so here's the project name. This is the project name, and we have 3 buttons: increase count, which will increase the count; decrease count, which will decrease the count; and this button would set the counter to 0. Now these counter buttons are not doing anything because I haven't added any functionality to any button yet, but we are going to do that right now. So for example, increase count, this is the first button, and here I need to use on click property, on click, and I can simply use the blank arrow function. That would be this, and this, and in that array function I have to declare the function for this on click property. All right, so I want when the user click on this increase count button, it would set the count to 1. I want to increase the count by 1, so this would be set count plus 1. After this, whenever the user clicks on this button increase count, the count would get increased by 1. Let's see, whenever I am clicking here, you see the counter is increasing always. All right, and if I simply reload this, the counter gets to 0 because our initial user state is telling it to shift to 0. So whenever any user refreshes this tab or go over to our website, he would see that the initial value for this counter is always 0. But let's say if we give the initial value to something like else like 10, the initial value would always be 10, like this. If I reload, you see the initial value gets to 10, but we don't want that. We want the initial value to be 0, so 0 it is. And now I need to add the functionality for the decrease count So I can simply use the on click property, and I'm going to use that simple array function. So this would be like this, and in this array function I need to add that specific property which will decrease the count one by one. All right, so here I want the set count property to decrease the value by 1, so count minus 1. That's it. And let's say increase count, decrease count. It's working perfectly. Reload, it's working perfectly. Now I need to set the property for this set to 0 button. So I can definitely use that on click, the simple array function, and here the set count value would be 0, because whenever the user clicks on set to 0, the counter must need to get to 0. Not up, not down, exactly 0. So let's see whether our project actually works or not. If I simply click increase count, the counter is increasing. If I simply click decrease count, the counter is decreasing. If I click on set to 0, it's getting 0. So it's working. So let's say the counter is just beside this button, so it doesn't look good. I can simply use another div to place my discount. So I can simply create a new div, and in that div I can simply place the count. This. So our counter is in the new line. All right. So now it should work. If I simply click increase count, the counter is increasing. If I simply click decrease count, the counter is decreasing. If I simply click, let's say set to 0, it's getting 0. All right. So our project is done. Now, as you can see, the counter size is pretty low, so I can simply increase this size. So I can simply use a style, and here I need to use font size property, and let's give it something like, let's say 25 pixel. All right, it looks good. Maybe for now, as I am telling you, this project is going to be very simple. We are not going to use any CSS or something like that, so I think it's good actually. All right, so our project is currently done. Now I can simply commit the changes. Init project done, and I can simply see the changes. All right, now let's talk about whether there are any way to make this code more beautiful. Yeah, there is. So how can we do that? For example, here I have used the inline properties, or you can say inline function in the buttons, but obviously I could have created additional functions, and then I could have simply add the function in the buttons property. So we can simply do that, I suppose. So let's say how we can do that. For example, before the return statement, we can simply create a new function. Let's say I'm gonna name it something like increase, const increase, and then this would be a arrow function, of course. And what would this arrow function does? It simply increase the count to 1. And if that's the case, then we don't need to worry about this inline function. All right, we can simply give it the on-click property, and here we can simply provide our increase function. That's it. And we are going to use the same thing for the other functions as well. Sorry, it would be here, not there. Let me do it right. On click, this is it. And let me create another function, and let's say I'm gonna name it something like const decrease, and it would also be an array function, and this function would simply decrease the count. So this would be set count, count minus 1. And let's say I'm gonna create one more function that would be set to 0. This would also be an array function, and here the count would be simply 0. That's it. And now I need to make the changes. So whenever the user clicks on decrease count button, it would call the decrease function, And in the same way, whenever the user calls the set to 0 button, it would simply call the set to 0 function. That's it. So let's check whether our application is working correctly or not. If I simply reload this, the initial value of our counter is 0. Increase count, it's increasing. Decrease count is it's decreasing. And if I simply click on set to 0, it's setting to 0. So our project is working perfectly. So I can simply commit these changes, project finished, and what changes we made: create the additional functions outside of the return statement. That's it. Commit and sync changes from here. All right. And so far we have done this project in our local machine, but now we need to deploy it somewhere else so that other users can access our project, right? So before doing that, let me come to my repository and reload this. You see our project is right here. So for now, I don't need this release and package section, so I simply can disable it. So I can simply click on this cogwheel and disable release and packages. I'm gonna keep the deployments because I would need that, obviously. For this project, I'm going to use Netlify to host our project. All right, so we have to build this project. So I can simply open our terminal in the local directory where I have created this project. All right, let me increase the terminal size so that you can see it clearly. And I can simply use the command npm run build. Enter. Simply give it some time. So first of all, I need to head over to Netlify and I need to log in first. If you don't have any account already, make sure to create an account. Now I will need to install the Netlify CLI. There are other ways to do it, but I prefer this way. So if you don't have installed it, make sure to add -g so that it can install it by globally. All right, so give it some time. So it has been installed. Now I need to log into Netlify via terminal, so I can simply use Netlify login. Now I need to authorize this application. Make sure that you have signed into your Netlify account beforehand. So it is all right for me, so I can simply click on authorize. So that's it. I have granted the permission, so I can simply close this tab. And now I want to deploy it, so I can simply use the command netlify deploy. All right, this folder isn't linked to a site yet. What would you like to do? Link this directory to an existing site, create and configure on a new site. I want to create and configure a new site, so I can simply choose this and click, hit the enter key. Team, yes, this is my team. Site name, leave blank for a random name. You can change it later, but I don't want any random name. I can simply use the current repository name, that is React Counter. So React Counter. React Counter Netlify app already exists, so I can simply use a different name like React Simple Counter. This name also exists, so I can simply use something like React Simplistic Counter. All right, the site has been created. Admin URL, this is it. URL, site ID, adding local, or please provide a publish directory, public or test. I can simply use the period. It's telling me that if everything looks good on your draft URL, deploy to your main site URL, use the product flag. So let's check our draft URL first. I don't see anything in my draft URL. Maybe I have done a mistake. Let me try it again. So Netlify deploy. The published directory would be dist. Let's check our draft URL. Now this time this draft URL actually works. So I did the mistake there by giving wrong directory. All right, so it looks good. Now I can simply deploy it by using Netlify deploy dash dash production. Please provide a published directory. That would be dist if I am not mistaken. Website URL is also here. Let's check it. Voila, our site is on live and everything works perfectly. So this was a very beginner friendly project in React, as I am also learning React for the first time in my life. So you saw that I was struggling too. However, we have learned and did something in public. So that's cool, right? That's it for today. I will see you in another video.